give you a message.
There you
There
go.
you go.
So it looked like, John, yeah, are we both sipping a whiskey, or is it were you having something else?
It's bourbon.
Bourbon. Okay, I went with my Manhattan for the evening.
There you go.
Right,
Yeah,
so-
Mike.
And a proper
Mike,
glass too.
I tried better this time.
Mike, what years were you on Seattle?
89 to 91.
So Mike and I crossed paths.
Yeah. I had terminated shore duty to go to sea because I wanted to make chief. And I was an electronics tech. So I went to the ship as an ET, but en route, before going to the ship, I had taken the test. I got to the ship, found out I made it, so they sucked me out of the ET shop and threw me down to the 3M office, 3M coordinator position.
Hey, Danny,
2 years, I left there, went up to Cutler, Maine for 2 years, and I got out.
you're kidding. I was stationed in Cutler 71 to 73. Then I went to the Seattle as an ET.
No, I left to Seattle and went to Cutler.
Just, you know what? You know that place is now run by civilians.
Oh yeah, we go up the coast every year, and we end up there. And the last time I walked up to the BLF site, of course now they have the full gate and everything. Where when I was there, they just had this little wooden slat that would go up and down. And I got met at the gate by 3 armed guards.
Really?
Yeah, 2 military, 1 civilian, and they wouldn't let me take pictures. Well, I take that back. They let me take pictures, but I had to show them the pictures before I left. They had to approve them. So yeah, they've tightened right up there.
Interesting.
The HF site's all gone. The only active Navy up there right now is the fire department. That's it.
Really? Right? As soon as you drive on the base on the right-hand side.
Right-hand side, it's still active Navy. Everything else is closed up. The housing is still all opened up, but it's all civilians.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting up there.
Believe it or not, I've got friends down here that have a condo on Cutler. I just met them about a year ago.
Yeah.
They were shocked that I even knew where Cutler was. And then when I told them, that I was stationed there in 71 to 73, they said, we may be living in your house.
Yeah, it's beautiful up there. Yeah, I mean, it's a great place as long as you've got something to do. There's not a whole lot to do up there but fish and hunt.
Hunt and fish.
Clam, you go clamming.
Go clamming.
I'm a little concerned. Craig Honor, is he lost?
Yes, he is. I'm forwarding him the email now.
I just double checked the link I sent, and it is the right one. If you had sent out one a month ago that had a bad date on it, but
Right.
been sending out recently, you fixed. So I give you, you did get the update.
I got your update, and I said it. That's what I put out on Facebook. And let me get back to you. Yeah, I just got a text from Craig saying, Zoom, where are you?
All right, now he's going to have to email the 3 captains. Let me
He's wherever he is, he's got Mazich and Fitzwilliam with him. You just said, please use Facebook update. I just sent him an email also with the correct link. That changes every time you get on Zoom, doesn't it?
every time you create one, it updates the number. I think here's David. He's calling in because we all know his bandwidth stinks in the Carolinas.
Craig just texted me back, says, send ID now.
All right.
I'm going to give him a call. I have to move out of sight here.
I got to find Craig's email address. Sorry, everybody.
You want me to send it to him?
Hey, David, we don't see you, but we probably hear you.
I'll send it to Craig.
I just
Thank
sent
you.
it to him. Where am I?
Okay. Going.
So I see David, but do we hear him yet?
So on the Zoom call, it's just that last string of digits that changes, right? Everything else is the same.
When I
Hey,
create
Greg,
each one, you need to use the
I just
hyperlink
sent you
that
an
comes
email
in.
with the correct links. And you go down to where it says HET, whatever,
Here's Vic.
Dartmouth, and click on it. It should be in blue, and click on that, and it'll get you right in.
Yeah.
I just sent, oh gee, I don't know. I'd have to go back to my emails. I don't.
I'm a first-time Zoom user, and I found it pretty easy. Just put the ID in there, and then when it came up, put the password in there, and it was pretty simple.
And sometimes if the hyperlink is functioning, it actually does all that for you. But you got it. You got through it. Did we lose
Yeah,
David again?
It was pretty simple. Just the 91155416645 for the meeting ID, and then the password when it came up 811368. It was pretty simple, and this is the first time I've ever used it.
We have a lot of
Sadly,
challenged people here.
I've been doing 3 to 5 calls a day on Zoom since April probably. It's been it's the way this is coming together. I just sent the invite to Craig. Let's see, we got Dave Holton back.
Dave, can you hear us?
Bye.
When Rich asked you, John, if you were on another aircraft carrier, I thought he was going to say you were at sea, and I was going to say, I don't think so.
Yeah, I just did the math on that also. No way.
We're actually in the yards right now, not North Shipco, thank God, but it's not a whole lot better. We're at Norfolk Naval in Portsmouth.
Ah, I had 2 North Shipco enjoyment exercises, but one we were in dry dock, and that was pretty impressive to walk under the ship. Pretty stressful. Mike, you
Right.
might have been there for that one.
Yeah, for that.
I did
Rich,
2
hey,
yard
Rich,
trades at
you
North
and I were in
Shipco on the
dry dock.
Seattle.
Say again, John?
Well, I did 2 North Shipco yard periods on the Seattle, and then this is one on the George Bush. This one's dry dock, and one of the 2 Seattle ones was dry dock.
Boy, it seems like Seattle spent a lot of time at North Shipco.
It did.
G-Pad F, that looks like Charles.
That's me.
And I just got off the phone with Craig. He's got the
Here's
correct.
Captain. Here's the
There's
captain.
Maz, there's Mazich, right? John, welcome.
Now we're, hey, Captain. Good to see you again.
I did.
Dad, you're not on. Did you just wave?
On purpose, so I can eat.
Yeah, no, I thought you just waved.
I was waiting for her.
For her?
She's the admiral.
Well, we'll try to give a chance for Craig to get in here, and
Craig Honor?
Yeah, he was just on the other one, trying to get the message out to everybody.
somehow a link got confused.
Hey, Charles, how's it going?
Hello.
Been over to Seattle lately?
Been through there, 3 or 4 times in the last month and a half. I never stop. I try not to.
Yeah.
I normally go through Seattle and have to go camping up north of Seattle, so.
You got to give it a wide berth.
No, I go right straight through downtown and get out of there as fast as I can.
You know, people blocking highways and that kind of stuff.
Well, we try and get around that stuff, yeah.
Now we're cooking.
Gentlemen, we have Phil Rule on board here. He was an XO at one period of time. I don't remember the years. Phil?
Is 85,
Okay.
86?
87.
I actually remember that.
87?
87, yeah.
When I got there in 88 or 89, Commander Greco got on board, and he proceeded to kick my butt for the next 2 years.
I think he kicked everybody's butt.
There was one in between him and Phil.
Fortunately, as a young ensign, I didn't run into. I don't have a memory of that XO. So Greco is so on my mind. God bless, rest his soul. But
Was that Frank Greco?
yes, it was. But it was
Yeah.
Commander Greco to me.
Yeah, he was my CO in mono.
This is David. Do you hear me?
David, you're in, but you're coming in from Mars.
Yeah. I got
Look, I see you.
bandwidth up here. I'm trying the telephone and I'll see what, at least I can listen. Don't call, talk, but you can carry on the thing, but I can hear everybody talking.
Okay, David. Everybody talk about David. He can hear us, but we can mute him.
Sweet.
If you were on last call, I accidentally muted him for a half an hour, and we didn't notice.
Nice guy, Dan.
I know it was an accident. It was a TV coming over the speakers that were, and I blocked a couple people.
Hey, there's Craig. How you doing? How you doing, Cap?
Best laid plans ever, Craig, and we still had 2 different numbers out there.
No problem. We rounded them all up, rendezvoused, moved over.
We called an audible.
Called them audible. Well, I see, yeah, there's Admiral. I haven't seen Captain Pete make it yet, though.
Puma's not up either, is he?
No.
He's trying.
Jorge joined at the last minute, and he hadn't moved over yet either, but they're working on it.
We're at 18 so far, so that's a good number.
Joseph Wander. Are you there?
Yes,
What years were you on board Seattle?
76 to 80.
76 to 80, okay. Trying to keep track of all this stuff here. Just to make sure here before we get started, if you're on our website, please send me your email. Let me get you at least registered. And then I believe Vic will get out a small gift to you guys after we get everything settled here. But we need, obviously, we need some sort of contact information.
If you want to just put it right into the chat function, you can just go into chat and put an email address here. And it'll get recorded with this and we'll be able to pull it out. Now we're talking, we're at 20.
Yeah, welcome, Captain Fitz.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh, there we go. You made it. I sent you a text there, Captain, but you can ignore it now.
M. Cosset.
Well, it looks like we have a full screen. Before we get started and do some introductions, I am Dan Justinsky, and David has asked me to just moderate and keep passing the ball around. But before we get started tonight, it has been in the last couple of weeks, we did lose a captain that was near and dear to many of the shipmates, and David would like to do a moment of silence, but for some reason my page is missing now. Hold on. Trying to make sure I share the right screen here. What happened? There. Again, best laid plans. I had this all set a second ago. Let's see if this will work.
There it is.
Huck Townsend.
All right,
We are
guys.
blessed to have chaplain on a chaplain with us tonight. If there's additional words of wisdom that can be added,
Well, let me say this. Dave obviously doesn't have a handle on this. So Captain Townsend was the second commanding officer of the Seattle from May of 71, excuse me, till May of 72 when he got transferred to USS Kitty Hawk. Last week at the age of 92, he passed away. He had been suffering from, I believe, Parkinson's for the last few years. And we were very lucky to have him at our reunion in 2017 in San Francisco. And if the chaplain is still with us and he's got a word or two, otherwise we'll have a moment of silence.
I would be happy to. This is, let us pray. Eternal Father, we are humbled to have served with so many great people on the USS Seattle, but especially, dear Lord, we commend into your eternal care our brother, Captain Townsend, and we commit him into your care and into the eternal rest of all those that have gone before us. All this we pray in your holy and precious name. Amen.
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 Thank you, Chaplain.
Thank you, chaplain. Ah. Let me.
Mr. LaCruso, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, and where are you from?
Oh, I'm George Robinson. I have
Okay. I know I recognize you. I thought you looked familiar, George.
This is a previous Zoom session I had, and I was playing with the name, and it keeps coming up.
Well, Rich,
no problem.
When you put out the invite to everybody, you had certain years and the captains from those years. Did you want to go through an agenda for kind of some order before we go random?
We really didn't have anything as far as order. I believe the early 80s was Captain Fitzwilliam, and then we went a little bit later to Captain Mazich, and then who was the other one, Craig, that we're supposed to have?
Frost.
Admiral Frost.
Okay.
So potentially we would start with the fond memories of Captain Fitz in the early 80s, back when I was still trying to get to where I could vote for Reagan.
Right. Okay, I'll start.
Thank you, sir.
I was CO 81 and 82. You want me to start now, right?
Yes, sir.
81, 82 were my years. During that time, Seattle made two deployments. One to the Med, through the Med to the Indian Ocean, and the second one to just the Med. In those days, there were always generally two carriers deployed in the Med. But when they started going to the Indian Ocean, they would just have one. They would try to keep two there, but they may have a period of time when they just had one. So in my 81 year, I deployed with a bunch of ships, got into the Med, they let me go, and I just went straight through the Med to Suez Canal and then into the Indian Ocean. Let's see. I worked for a task group, a carrier task group there. And we would, act like an AOE and give them food and fuel, and we didn't pass much ammunition. And I stayed there for about 4 months, 4 or 5 months actually. What our job was to pick up the food and the personnel from, I would go to an anchorage off of Oman, and about 3 miles off, and the helo, we had 2 helos that would cycle in and pick up personnel for the task group. They were sent from the States, other places, and they assembled there. I picked them up, and then at the last, we were there for maybe 2 or 3 days, and on the last day, I would pick up fresh food. That was from, forgotten where it was. It was Middle East.
Mhm.
What's that place that's gone to hell now?
Beirut?
It was,
India.
yeah, it was, well, it'll come back to me. Then, of course, we would cycle back out to the fleet, pass all that stuff around, and give them all our fuel, and then we were dismissed for a few days to go meet up with a civilian tanker and bring the oil on. That took a day or so, and then we'd go service the fleet again. So we went back and forth to Oman maybe 3 times, and then we were going to be relieved by somebody. We were excused, so we went back through the Suez Canal.
We're sure that Detroit couldn't get underway, so that's why,
Yeah, probably that's true. Probably that's true. Actually, the squadron commander Cerberon commander I had was an ex-Detroit guy, and Detroit had a collision with somebody, or no, they went aground in Norfolk. That's what it was. And so I took a lot of her duties, but being an ex-Detroit guy, the Cerberon, no friend of mine. Fortunately, he was home ported. They were home ported up in New Jersey somewhere, and I was in Norfolk, so I didn't have to do very much with him, just answer his messages. Anyway, we're on the way back to complete our 6-month deployment, and just as we passed through the Gulf of Oman and headed towards Suez, I got a call from 6th Fleet on ICOMNet. He said, you know, I hate to tell you this, but I think I'm going to have to turn you around and send you back there. And I said, well, cheery, aye, aye. And he said, what is it you want when you do come out? And I said, well, we have a port visit to Haifa. And I knew that was hard to set up. So I said, I'd really like to go to Haifa. And he said, all right, I'll get back to you. And he was back in about 15 minutes, and he said, never mind. I got somebody else to fill in for you. Yeah, we were out there for, maybe 4 months in the Indian Ocean. And when you're gone at sea for, at least this was the policy at the time, you're gone at sea for 100 days without a port visit, you can issue 2 beers to all hands over 21. You just got to do it off the ship. So we put a float in the water and invited everybody to go down. I went down, of course, and had 2 quick beers, and then got the heck up off of there, so there wouldn't be any question about the skipper cheating. And so I say, we were almost a second 100 days there, so we were going to get another one of those port visits with 2 beers. But we didn't. Now, in those days, it was 81, the new CNO had come on board. He declared that, well, you know, marijuana was a problem for about 10, 12 years or so. And he wanted to clear that up. So he said, okay, you skippers, it's 1, 2, or 3 strikes, you're out. You can let a guy, you know, give him all the attention you want, but at the 3rd time, you got to throw him out. But on the other hand, you can throw him out on the 1st time. So I had a guy come up almost immediately, and there was no question he was a marijuana smoker on board. So I said, well, you're out of the Navy, son. And the word got around, and I don't know, I think that that may have helped a little, because when we got back to Norfolk and had an all hands check, we had better numbers than destroyers and small ships, and certainly better people, because all our guys were you know, seamen, firemen, and so forth, no rated men, whereas another destroyer had a 1st class and actually an officer test positive. So anyway, I think we solved that problem. Let's see. We when I got on the phone last time, I was asked, what were your high points and what were your low points? And so I've made a list of my high points and a couple of low points too. I'll tell you them first. The low points is that while we were transiting the Med going home, a big storm came up and tore off one accommodation ladder. So that put us in the hurt locker. And while we were on, this on my 2nd visit to the Mediterranean, where I didn't get through the Indian Ocean, we just had some normal ops, I experienced an explosion in a void. An explosion on an AOE, as you can imagine, is not a good thing.
No.
But this was a void in which there was long-term storage, and a couple of items that were in there made contact with another through capillary action of a liquid, and boom. But it was a one-time pop. What happened was the chemicals got together, heated up the whole void, and it was caught by a watch. We were in port, getting ready to get underway, actually. It was caught by a watch, a roving watch, and he called the OD and called away the fire detail. And that was a little bit of a problem, because when the thing popped, there wasn't anybody else in engineering. The guy was on the way out, except that the fire team was coming down the main ladder to engine room and got blown back up out of the way. So we had about 6 people who suffered some really bad burns from that, including the engineer. And we survived that. There was no damage to the ship other than the void had a bulkhead blown out, and of course the personnel casualties.
Captain, that might be the first time we've heard that story. I don't know if anybody ever talked about that void explosion in other conversations. There was other fires in the years, but might be the first time we've heard that story.
Well,
I was on board at that time.
I'm sorry?
I was on board at that time, Captain.
Oh, okay. Well, you can tell me, you can comment when I'm through here. Um, I forgot what I was going to say.
I think
If you want to make a comment, go ahead.
we're
That was-
hoping
that
to get
was
to the
in,
high points.
That was in Port Taurus, wasn't it, Captain?
Yes.
Sardinia?
Yeah. Were you okay?
I was on board in 1970, but I've done a lot of research on the ship.
Oh, okay.
And I've got a bunch of pictures of the mess deck.
Oh,
It
all
was
right.
pretty much torn up.
Actually, I don't remember the mess deck torn up. There really wasn't that much damage. It was.
I think it was just some of the ceilings were blown out and
Oh, okay.
stuff moved around, nothing major.
Wasn't there some damage to superficial damage to after steering?
Yes, right.
Ah.
It bothered after steering, but that was fixed. It wasn't hard to fix. It was doable. As a matter of fact, I didn't make a big deal out of telling everybody about this because after I'd made my report, I figured that was a downer. I didn't want to advertise it. Hey, but my up points were, we got a port visit to Haifa. People don't get to do that very often. We had a visit from the USO while we were in the Indian Ocean. I don't know how they worked that out. They must have flown to the carrier or something. We held a swim call in the Indian Ocean, and that held up morale for a while. And finally, we had the highest reenlistment rate of any service force ship in the Atlantic Fleet at that time. So that was all good. And I've run out of things to say.
So can I interject for a second there, Captain?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so the after steering problem surfaced its head about 10 years later.
Oh, is that right?
When we went into the Philadelphia shipyard, and it turns out the after steering mechanism, that big hydraulic piston in there, was starting to leak at the seals. And Philadelphia shipyard wanted to replace the whole. Of course, they were looking for business. They were scheduled to shut down, and so they obviously want to keep Seattle in there for 10 years if they could.
Yeah.
And so it was leaking. There was no doubt it was leaking, but it was a rag leak. You just had to periodically wipe it off. And so they wanted to replace that whole thing, which meant rooting out the whole flight deck, going down a couple of decks, pulling out the whole piston assembly out of the ship, and then redoing everything else, which would have been like a 6-month job. And we got served land to say rags are fine, and so problem solved.
Yeah, that's right. That's what the type commander would say. Let's see, I had another note here. In 1981, the CNO, did I tell you this? The CNO, yeah, said 1, 2, or 3 strikes you're out. Now, was that policy still in effect when, Greg, when you had the ship, for instance? Or anybody?
No, I don't remember that specific policy, 1, 2, 3 strikes, and so I really can't comment on it. We were kind of, doing our business and making intelligent decisions on who should be retained and who shouldn't be. And we're obviously trying to retrain a lot of them.
Yeah. That must have gone the way of the dodo bird shortly after it was in place. But it sure helped our ship, I'll tell you that.
Captain, are you a Notre Dame grad?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are you a Notre Dame grad?
No, I'm not. Absolutely.
No.
No, I like Notre Dame. I have some friends there, and I love to watch Navy every once in a while, 4 times out of 100, beat them. It does happen. But,
I got one question for, like I say, I've done a lot of research and put it into book form about the Seattle. And I know in 1979, we went into the yards, had our 3-inch 50s off the bow removed, and the Sparrow system put in. When was the CWIS in the back put in?
After
I
my
understand
time,
sometime in 81.
no, I wouldn't,
Same time.
oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the missile.
CWIS came on in 85.
In
'Cause
85.
I caught Seattle on cruise in 85 and they had just put them on. And they were having problems. In fact, we had a couple techs write us through part of the deployment. And I had the FCs working with them to make sure it stayed up.
Okay.
And the other problem was they didn't update the COSAL, so the ship did not have any of the required spare parts that we were supposed to have, because when they updated the CWIS system in the yards, they didn't update the COSAL, which was the allowance list for support. So we completed that. I joined it in about the middle of that deployment. We completed that deployment, and we kept CAS repping the CWIS system because we didn't have anything on board for it.
You know, that was a problem on my tour of the Indian Ocean because we had just come out of the overhaul, and we had a supply overhaul, soap thing, they called it then. And my supply officer told me, he came aboard and he told me, you know, Captain, we didn't have a good soap. I don't have anything for the new missile system. I don't have anything for a lot of stuff. So that's a problem that I don't know if it still exists, but you know, supply people and the Navy line people have a misconnect.
It's worse nowadays because I'm not sure what NAVSUP does other than Navy cash and store management.
Well, whatever.
Now, was it my imagination, Captain Fitzwilliam, you said it was 100 days at sea and you had to leave the ship. I have to say that when I got my 2 beers for being in the Red Sea forever, it seemed like we cut that down to 60 days and I was just on the flight deck. Now, I was an ensign, so I was taking orders from a senior officer, but it seemed to me we shrunk the time and we didn't have to leave the vessel.
Well, that's better, I guess. There wasn't any danger except you might fall off the accommodation ladder on the way back to the ship.
Is my memory correct, shipmates? As we got into the later 80s, closer to 1990, were we doing 60 days at sea or was it still 100 days?
No, it was 60 and it was 2 beers and it was on the flight deck.
It was crappy beer, but it was, we had steel beaches. Oh, Captain Fitzwilliam, that was great.
Okay.
So the shipmates from the early 80s, any other, you know, thinking about Jerry Remy giving the color on the baseball Red Sox, any other stories that were hidden from the captain during the time when you were sailing with him? So that you knew everything going on.
I doubt it.
Well, thank you for sharing. We hope, you know, hopefully the Sea Stories is continuing over the next hour or so, continue to bring back memories of what occurred after you left the ship, Captain. As we go forward, Craig, who is the next commanding officer?
The next one that's here is Admiral Mazak, and he's somewhere there. Oh, there he is. He's scratching his head. A lot of pictures there. He's the captain, and he's got lots of stories.
Yeah, I took the ship from Dave Frost, and I don't know whether he's coming up or not, Craig, but Frosty, he and I had known each other for some time, and so taking the ship from him was, I was concerned right off the bat because I knew that he had been having more fun than he probably should have while he was the CO. But if he's not here, then he's not going to be able to debate with me.
I can say a couple things, Maz.
So go ahead.
Well, one is I got to the ship. I caught it in Barcelona. Phil Rule was the XO.
Right.
And my first memory was I finally got to Barcelona. I got on the ship, and the next thing you know, we're dragging anchor in Barcelona. Frosty's ashore, and so Jim Majority's trying to get this phone line off the anchor, and Phil Rule's taking us out to sea. And I'm like, now what do we do? Where's the captain? We sent the 46s in. We got him. We got back, and the first time I served with an aviator, and he gets back on the ship. Storm calms down, and he goes out to the crew and he says, look, we got 1 day left in Barcelona. He says, I'm going to take the ship back in. I don't want any problems. I want everybody to take care of their shipmates. I want everybody to come back and be safe. We pulled back in, dropped the anchor. Crew went in the 24 hours. Everybody came back, no problem. It just shocked me. So there was that one. The Seattle was also there for the line of death with Libya. And Phil will remember this. We were in, oh God, what's that island? Mallorca. We were in Mallorca with Saratoga, Yorktown, and one of the DDs. I think it was Karen or something. But we were getting underway from that, and we got contacted by CTF by what was it, 63? And they said, hey, you need to hurry up and unrep. You know, this thing's going down with the line of death. You need to hurry up and unrep Saratoga and those 2 ships. And then our favorite ship, the Detroit, had burned a boiler up and was having to pull into rota, and we were going to have to go down and unrep the Independence strike group. And we're trying to tell Saratoga this, and they're like, get to the back of the bus, get to the back of the bus. And after about an hour, all of a sudden it was, okay, get up here and unrep. We unrepped them. As soon as we got done, we swung, and we were screaming at like 30 some odd knots. Steve, you probably remember this. Frosty said it was like throwing a Mercedes off the back of the ship because we used gray fuel. And we steamed down and we swung around, and Phil said, pull up, you know, Romeo, both sides, whoever gets, carrier comes on the one side, whoever gets here first on the other side, we fuel them. And we did them, and then they told us to go do Coral Sea. So we're screaming the Coral Sea. We almost did three strike group unreps in 24 hours. Somebody on the staff finally woke up and said, Seattle, where are you? And we said, da, 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 da. And they said, well, how much longer do you get to the Coral Sea? We said, you know, about 6 hours. What's your speed? 32 knots. Slow down. So we didn't quite make 3 strike groups in 24 hours, but it was dang close. The other thing was, while we were out there, they did dual carrier ops I think it was after the line of death, and we had the Commodore from CTF 63 on board, and Phil will remember this. Frosty didn't like the Commodore. Phil didn't like the Commodore, so it was ops, keep the Commodore occupied. And so the Commodore, you know, I remember one thing with him he's up on the bridge, and there was this one USNS ship, and the guy wouldn't get in station. He finally picked up the red phone and said, Smitty, I know you can hear me. If you don't get back in station, I'm going to fire you. The ship got back in station. But he was trying to, can we give somebody mail? Can we do this? Can we do that? And ships are going, I don't want mail. I don't want, leave me alone. I'm trying to do whatever I'm doing. But it was a different time.
So Frosty's supposed to join us here shortly. If you can hold off on his, it might wait. Let Admiral Mazak speak a little more.
I love that. Do I need to send an email, Craig, or have you forwarded the correct link?
Let me send it to him again, okay?
Thank you, Captain. Back to you.
Well, Tuma and Rule and Steve were all with me, 87 and 88, I guess. I don't know if we got into 89 or not. And really, Frost had left the ship in as good a shape, I think, as he probably could have. But we did some shipyard time at North Shipco, and then as fate would have it, with everybody that comes out of the shipyard, you have to go down and spend time in Guantanamo Bay and make sure that everyone knows what they're supposed to do. And we soon found out that almost everyone knew what they were supposed to do. But we probably spent more time there. As a matter of fact, I thought we were going to do a home port shift in Gitmo because we, for whatever reason, and he's not with us on this particular Zoom, but Greg Huber, and actually then his relief, we're down there, and you know, everybody got through ref tray except the engineers. And so we stayed another week, and then we stayed another week. And I thought, and the worst part about it is the fact that the bosuns didn't really much like the fact that the engineers couldn't get through a main space fire drill. And so they decided they were going to go down there and tell the engineers what the hell they needed to do, etc. And it was sort of a zoo there for a while. But we finally got out of there, and then actually workups, etc. with the battle group Coral Sea. We had some interesting guys on that deployment. Both the CO of the Coral Sea, Bruce Bremner, who he loved to come alongside and then practice doing turns, and we'd go 360 degrees around a circle while we're unrepping. And it's driving me, I mean, I'm not too worried about it because we're the guide, but he liked it. I'm not so sure his guys did. And that caused us some consternation a couple of times. We had to do a couple of emergency breakaways, and we tore some rigs out of the deck because he decided he was going to drift off in a right-hand turn. He was going to drift off to the left. And I'm talking to him the whole time, you know, bridge to bridge, and he's not saying anything, and all of a sudden, bam! And so we had to get out of there and do. But that was kind of fun. We ran the gig around Rosie Rose, Puerto Rico. Tuma was with us. We were taking ordnance on at anchor, and I decided that, you know, we needed to go into Rosie Rose and perhaps have a cocktail or whatever at the Oak Club. And so we put the gig in the water and we drove the gig in, and it was getting dark, and lo and behold, all of a sudden we're not moving. And I'm thinking, well,
your bosun ran a boat aground.
And the bosun, that's right, was driving the damn boat. But so be it. We were in shallow enough water that we were able to lighten the load a bit by getting about 6 or 8 guys out of the gig into the water, and it pushed the damn thing back out. And so it floated, and we made the corrections and went ashore and had a nice dinner at the Oak Club, and we made it back. So, you know, we had some fun, but, you know, maybe we weren't doing what we were supposed to do. During workups, we had Yorktown. I heard somebody mention Yorktown earlier, and the CO of Yorktown had been I knew who he was. His name was Phil Durer, and he was a very sophisticated sort of a guy. Didn't like any kind of, you know, anything other than by the book. And so we were doing some practice, you know, we were running up Romeo and having him do some practice approaches. And the MPA came up and he said, you know, Captain, we got to do a full power run before we go back into port. And I said, what better time than to do it while we have this damn whiz-bang cruiser behind us with this guy who would never suspect us of doing anything like this. And so we suckered him into a couple of approaches, and then I said, all right, just go ahead and start the full power. So we did, and we waited until we got 13 knots, I think was what we were using alongside. And by the time we got to 17 or 18, I ran up Romeo. But now by the time he has seen Romeo go up, now we're at 20. And then we're going to 22, 24, and nothing's happening. And so I'm talking to him on the radio, and amazingly enough, he had a 3-star on board Jack Reddy, who was airlant at the time and was just riding with him to see what the battle group was doing. And so nothing happened, and he couldn't close on us. And he's not saying anything because he's thinking his guys are screwing the pooch down there in the engine room. And then all of a sudden, you could see him light off that other LM, and a rooster tail comes up behind the cruiser behind us. But by now we're 28, 29 knots, and we're pushing 30, and we're going to go through 30 because I'm looking up at the stack, trying to figure out whether we're lifting any safeties or not, and it doesn't appear that we are. And so let's keep going. And Ditzler says, yeah, let's keep going. So poof, 32 knots, and he cannot catch our ass. He is in full blower back there behind us, and he can't catch us. So he finally called and he said, I won't say exactly what he said, but and it's not because I need to worry about what I say, but he was not happy that I had obviously disregarded the normal, practicing, coming alongside, et cetera, and I couldn't have been happier because not only did we finish our full power run, but he never got alongside. So we had some fun along the way. We did some other things in the med. We made a med deployment, and we got called away from the battle group mysteriously one night. Jack Reddy, it turns out, was the battle group commander over on Coral Sea, and I get a message from the 6th Fleet commander that says, it's a personal message, and it says, I want you to detach the battle group. I want you to make best speed to Naples, and when you get here, I'll let you know what's going on. And I thought, this is a little strange, but rather than just turn and go, I called the battle group commander and I said, what do you want me to do? And what do you want us to do? And he said, well, 6th Fleet commander wants you to come to Naples. I guess you better go to Naples. And he said, well, we got to he says, best speed. And he said, that ought to be fun. Okay, here we go. So here we go on another high-speed run to Naples from the Western Med, and we get to Naples Harbor and drop the hook. It was about a day and a half steaming at max blower, and we get there, and here comes the helo. It's the 6th Fleet helo, and it has the 6th Fleet commander on it. He gets out. I know who he is. I've met him before. He was the ex-CO of Cecil Field, and he says, listen, he said, can we go up the cabin? So we did that. And he said, look, first of all, I want you to take my firearm and put it in your safe. And I said, oh, okay, I'm happy to do that. And then he says, can you put the gig in the water? And I said, well, sure. So now I'm thinking, let me think about this. He's in Gaeta. He flies down to Naples. He gets on the ship. Now he wants to go back ashore in Naples. But so be it. He's a 3-star, and I'm Captain Mazak, and the boys are here, and we're not with the battle group, and everybody's going, what the hell are we doing here? So we put the gig in the water, and he gets in the gig and says, I'd like you to take me into the fleet landing and then bring the gig back out to the ship, bring it up, put it away. You guys can detach and go back to the battle group. And I'm thinking, what in the world? And he said, oh, by the way, my chief of staff is the only guy who knows where I am. Here is his number. If for some reason I have to get a hold of you or whatever, well, this is all way beyond me as to what this guy is trying to do. You may or may remember, if you followed anything that went on in the Mediterranean with the 6th Fleet and the USO, et cetera, but this guy was dating on the side the lady that ran the USO in Naples. And so this was his way of extricating himself from Gaeta and coming down to Naples to see the Seattle, which he had made us run for a day and a half to come see him, and then to go ashore and get on his way. And nobody else knew where he was or what he was doing, except the whole Seattle crew who had watched this whole thing go on. But then he says, okay, now you guys get out of here. So we did. We went back to the battle group, and that was the end of that story. But we did lots of those kinds of things. And one of the things that I remember about that ship the most was the fact that if you wanted to go fast, you could go fast. If you wanted to run people in the dirt with fuel and cargo, you could do that in a heartbeat. I don't care whether it was a carrier or destroyer, a cruiser. I mean, it was amazing. We had the battleship alongside a couple of times, and we had guys, the nuclear cruisers would get alongside, and some of them would turn off their radars and some of them wouldn't. And you're up there on the bridge and it's getting a little warm, you know, and you can't figure out what the hell is going on. But so we really, we tried to have as much fun as we could. We were in the Med for Christmas. I remember we were in Cannes. Is that not right, Charlie? Were you still there then, Steve?
Steve might have been there. I wasn't.
We had some guys, believe it or not, Tuma's relief actually was the guy who could sing. He had done some opera stuff or something in college. And so we put together a choral group to entertain folks. And then we went to Cannes, and the Navy League lady there was a gal named Avery Glees Kane. And she was a lawyer who had been living in Cannes for some time. At any rate, we were put on at several parties, and the Seattle Glee Club basically held their own there. So we had a lot of, besides being almost having to change home ports to Gitmo before we went on the cruise, we made up for it. And I think everybody had a reasonable time. I know Steve Funk could not order succotash or Brussels sprouts, and the Sixth Fleet did without those things in the Med while we were there, because I didn't like them. And I said, well, if I don't like them, they're not going to get them either, because we'll definitely get the leftovers. So we had a good time. And then, of course, we pulled into Haifa, and it was time for me to leave the ship. And so I got dutifully relieved. And again, the USO folks there were very kind to take care of us, and got me to the airport and sent me home. So that was kind of a whirlwind go. You guys may remember some other things. Steve.
I have to interject. The captain glossed over during the endless Gitmo summer. We were also tasked to go to Rosie Roads, and the Navy was closing down the ammunition depot down there. And we spent days and days vert repping ammo from this muddy field that they had staged this stuff on. Some of this stuff dated pre-World War I, and I'm not exaggerating.
Yes, absolutely.
And then they had all these filing cabinet destroyer things, which are thermite blankets that you put over a filing cabinet and it goes away if you light it. And, you know, we weren't even really certified to carry those things. We staged them on deck because there's no way we're going to put them below. And some of this stuff was leaking. It was just horrendous. And so we finally get done with Gitmo and get done with that, go back, and we have to go to Yorktown to offload it. And we get to Yorktown, and the civilians at Yorktown won't take it because it doesn't meet any of the safety regulations. And I remember Surfland, I think, came on board, sir, or maybe it was the Surferon. And they basically, we were in your cabin, and he said, well, why did you load all this stuff? And we said, because you told us to, sir. It was crazy.
That's a Steve Funk.
Yeah, when we went to Yorktown, we took the dependents. You remember, we had a lady that was given the entire history of sailing up the York River to Yorktown to drop that stuff, or try to drop that stuff off. And we had all kinds of people running all over the ship. I remember that as well.
Hey, Maz, I got a question on that.
Sure.
When the Sixth Fleet was in Naples with you, he gave you his sidearm, and then what did you do with it? Did he get it back?
Evidently he did. I never took it back to him, but he was in he was in touch with the ship, and for all I know, it was in Haifa, but it happened after I left. It was a turnover item with my relief. I said, this is not mine. It's in the safe and it's staying there. It's the Sixth Fleet's. Why he had it with him, I don't know that either.
Yeah, well,
Name was Ken Moranville.
Casey got caught. That's why he had it.
yeah.
Could be.
Well, that never came out then. Miranda.
No. Oh, no, none of that whole story never came out.
Be done.
Hey, so Admiral, do you remember we were in the shipyard, and I think Phil remembers this. It was a Friday afternoon, and I lived across from the XO from Phil. It was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and all of a sudden we heard duty corpsman, main engineering space number 2, lower level.
Yep.
Don't go there, Charlie.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
And so I come out of my cabin, and Phil comes out of his cabin, and we look at each other and go, why the heck do they need a duty corpsman at the lower level, you know, the engine room at this time of day? And we look at each other and we go, Captain, where's the captain? So we both run to your stateroom. You're not there. And we go like rockets down to the bottom of that.
So did I.
And there you are at the bottom of the ladder, sprawled with the corpsman. And it's like, now what do we do? And Phil says, we're not telling anybody. He took you to the Naval Hospital because if you remember, we had the in-serve, and the in-serve didn't go well. And the chief of staff came over to help us and told us we need, from Log Brief 2, came over and told us we needed to clean the ship. And
Yeah.
I remember he told you we had to clean the ship. And before he told you that, I remember going around with him, and Phil had to stop me because we had cleaned the ship, and this guy takes and he sticks his hand behind the locker in one of the deck berthing compartments. Nothing comes out. He says, I need a coat hanger. We give him a coat hanger. He pulls a white glove out of his back pocket, undoes the coat hanger, sticks it on there, takes the coat hanger with the white glove, sticks it behind the locker, and sticks it back in as far as he can and pulls it out. And of course, it comes out with dirt. And he says, see, you guys didn't clean. And so we had to clean the ship, and we knew that if you went away, we were going to get that chief of staff as the CO. So it was like nobody said anything. You wore black sneakers for a month.
Yeah.
And
I ought to tell you what happened. I was going down there to visit with the BTs, and so I'd go down the stairs, and then the last several, normally you could just kind of slide down on the rails on your hands, and surely you all have done that. But anyway, it basically, the rails were slipperier than I would have guessed, and not enough friction was available for me to stop. And I got down to the bottom rather quickly, and I crushed both of my heels to the extent that, it hurt like hell. There was nothing anybody could do about it. It just had to heal. But so I was wearing black sneakers around the ship, and there was a lot of guffawing and he and that sort of thing. But yeah, that did happen, Charlie. Thank you for bringing that up. Anyway.
It was good. It wasn't permanent damage.
No, it certainly doesn't seem to have taken any permanency.
Admiral, when did you leave before September '87?
I want to say.
Or '88, I mean, '88.
Yes.
All right. Because we ended up in Gitmo in early '89 then, and had the same trouble with getting through the firefighting as you had previously. So apparently it happens every time.
I don't know about every time, but it certainly did. It certainly did haunt us. And I'm trying. What's the guy who Charlie? You were gone. Phil, you were gone. I'm trying to think who relieved me, but it was a
Craig remembered him last time. Craig remembered
the captain,
a short surface warfare officer.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Tolbert?
It was
Yeah.
Tolbert. That's right.
Tolbert.
He was
Yep,
my
that's
first CO
exactly.
on board. All right.
God, were you still there, Funk? You weren't there.
I ended up being there. I kept getting extended because they supposedly couldn't ever find me a relief, which is hard to believe because AOEs were like every supply corps officer in the Navy wanted an AOE. And then, so they finally found a relief and he came down. He was stationed, he was coming from OpNav and he came down a weekend before we were getting ready to deploy to see the ship. And the guy, he was a lieutenant commander, and his junior sea tour was with an aviation squadron, so he had never been on the ship before. So we gave him a tour, took him up, introduced him to the captain. I took him off. I knew this was going to be bad. And, you know, he no more left the brow. And Captain Tolbert, you know, step over to the captain's cabin. He says, I can't have him as a supply officer. He's never been on a ship before. So he got kicked out before he even got there. So I ended up deploying with him. And I ended up spending 3 years and like 3 months on her before I ended up finally getting off.
Were you there with Sepulveda, Commander Sepulveda?
Yeah.
All right. So somehow we passed in the wardroom, but I was such an ensign, I was too afraid to even talk to the sub up. You know, sometimes as the only ensign on board, you weren't very visible in the wardroom.
But you know, besides all the stuff that we did and all the stuff that happened, it was certainly a learning experience. In that, you know, first time we went alongside a carrier. Again, I know the CO of the carrier, and he's a West Coast guy, and we hook up. And you know, I like many of you had folks who had been, for instance, the fuels guys, et cetera, et cetera. Those guys had been doing this forever. And so this guy calls me up and he says, John, you are pumping really bad fuel. I've cut off the station umpty frets and umpty frets. The fuel is, you know, basically bad. And so I'm going, oh, great. So this is the first carrier that's been alongside since I've been the CO, and I know the CO of the carrier. And so he's thinking we don't know what we're doing. So I called the guy up to the bridge, the fuels guy, and I said, hey,
Jerry,
what's going on? And he says, fuel's perfect. Here's what we're sending him. So I said, oh, good. What do you suggest? He said, oh, this usually works. Tell him we're going to switch tanks. So we did. We told him we were going to switch tanks, and we stopped pumping for a while. And then I said, all right, send me another damn sample up here before I start pumping it. So he sends another sample up, and it's perfect. I mean, it's you know, looks like whiskey. So anyway, all right, sir, we've switched tanks. I'm commencing pumping if you'll accept it, and let me know what you think. Nothing happens, nothing happens. Finally, he comes up and he says, oh, much better. Same stuff. I have no earthly idea what happened. But those are the kinds of things that go on a ship like that. And normally, you know, I was a carrier CO after I had Seattle, and I rode another carrier as a battle group commander. And anytime I heard anything about fuel and about stores and about unreps, and the carrier guys are bitching about it, I always said, you know, you guys probably don't know nearly as much about this stuff as those guys on the other side do. You probably ought to ask them what the heck's going on instead of just, you know, canning them and saying, wait a minute, those guys don't know what they're doing. So it was a learning experience, certainly for me, and a great tour. I had great guys. That's the only way you can make that ship work, 650 people. Lots
So
of
I don't want to interrupt too much here, Admiral, but we got another Admiral on the phone now.
Frosty.
yes, sir. How you doing?
Everybody
I'm
start
good.
saying good things now.
Yeah, now I'm gonna have to clean up my act. But actually, I did not say anything, and you've got guys here who are on your side. You've got Tuma listening to you. you've got Steve Funk listening to you, and you got Phil Rule listening to you. So be careful what you
Oh my
say.
gosh. Do you have video on me, by the way? I've had trouble with that.
No, I say a camera with a line through it.
Yeah, I haven't been able to fix that.
We don't have any video, but it looks like you need a haircut.
That's Chinese for being
doesn't.
blocked, that camera.
Actually, that's not funny because part of this little treatment crap I've been going through, I look like Mozak now. Anyway, don't let me interrupt what was going on.
No, wait, I'm done. I mean, you need to take over when the chair and the captain's on the bridge over there was elevated so that the CO before you could be taller than anybody on the bridge. I'll never forget that little short story.
Admiral Maz has already run his gigaground, so you're up, Admiral Frost.
Yeah, you can do anything you want to do.
All right. Well, I have so many memories of this, and I'm glad to join this thing. I'm sorry I'm a little late, but I was in a little bit of a treatment fog there for a while.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm fine. Actually, the good news is I'm home in Colorado right now. I'm on a 3-week treatment program, and I have to go. The good news is I'm in MD Anderson in the hands of some really good docs. The bad news is and the other good news is I'm in an experimental program. The bad news is I have to go back to Houston to get the treatment every 3 weeks. So I'm enjoying the time off right now.
Good.
All right, so let's my memory of Seattle. I have so many fantastic memories. The first one is over. I had Captain Rotroff before me, and I had a reputation, let's say, and I had heard quite a bit about it before I got there. So the ship was in mid-cruise. I got there, I think I joined it at sea, if I remember correctly, but very shortly afterwards, we went into port in Ville-France on the French Riviera, which is where the change of command happened. And Captain Rotroff, it was an interesting guy. Interesting guy. Does anybody here on this video remember him? Were you ever on a ship with him?
Oh, yeah.
I was.
Yep.
Well, were you there for the change of command?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So here's my memory of this, and you can correct me because everything looks different depending on where you sit. But the crew had been working hard. We all know Seattle's a hard-working ship, and during that cruise, we had something like 300 ships alongside. The crew had been working hard. They're about 2 or 3 months into the cruise, and really had no liberty yet, and they were, wound pretty tight. And so Jack Reddy came over and officiated at the change of command. Gave a speech. The change of command was about 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning, something like that. So he left the ship, and I knew that guys needed to get off and get unwound a little bit. But I was a little nervous about this, so I had an all-hands meeting right after he left on the helo deck, and said to the crew, I said, "Look, I know you've been working hard, and I know you need some liberty, and this is a great port, but I'm a little concerned that we don't blow off too much steam in the first night. So here's the rules with me. If you the short's your friend. If you go on liberty and you get a little overserved, and the shore patrol tells you to come back, then come back. No harm, no foul. But don't screw with the shore patrol, or I will come down pretty hard on you." And then so I had holiday routine for the next 2 days. And I was sat there on pins and needles just waiting for a Liberty incident of epic proportions. But we got through that Liberty port okay. And anybody want want to correct that memory?
No, I remember giving it an honest effort to try to mess it up, but we seem to do okay.
Yeah, you guys did. The guys did great. It was great. So we go to sea, and I start to understand the full power of the ship and what it can do for the fleet. And we worked and worked and worked and had a successful cruise. Came back, had a shipyard period. So my next big memory that I want to impart is we came out of about a 2-month shipyard period downtown Norfolk, and one of the commercial yards downtown Norfolk. And by this time, I'm thinking I'm a pretty good ship handler. And we'd been in and out of Norfolk a bit, and as you guys will all remember, there was usually about 3 or 4 tugs waiting there to meet us in a docking pilot. But the docking pilot I had all the time was a guy named Captain Garcia, and he and I had kind of had a relationship. So we're coming in to Norfolk after the sea trials for this sea period, and luck would have it, we had timed it perfectly. It was a beautiful day. There was no wind. There was, I hit it right at slack water, so there's no current. And we're going back into Pier 4, which a lot of guys will remember that pier, that big pier we often went to in Norfolk. And everything is perfect. Captain Garcia's got 4 tugs made up. We're just about to make the final left turn into the pier, which stuck out into the channel. And Captain Garcia and I are having a cup of coffee thinking we're masters of the universe. Everything is looking perfect. And then about maybe less than 2 minutes later, everything didn't look so perfect. In fact, something was seriously wrong, and we couldn't either of us figure out immediately what had happened. And then it dawned on us next that we're going too fast. We're not slowing down. We'd rung up all stop, and the ship was going to the Navy Exchange parking lot, it looks like. So he got all tugs. Luckily, they were already made up. He got all the tugs cranking full steam astern and pulling us astern. I went into the pilot house. I looked at the tachometers, and the starboard engine was, but first I looked at the engine order telegraph. We had rung up all stop, and the engine room had answered all stop. And then I looked up at the tachometer, and the right engine was still going ahead 2/3, and the left engine was at 0 RPM. So I backed the good engine back down, emergency, dropped the anchor, and we probably missed going aground by about 4 feet or so. And after I went down and changed my trousers, luckily that had big engines, and the good engine I had left, plus the 4 tugs, plus maybe a little help from the anchor, saved us from a real bad situation. I also remember the tremendous power and expertise we had in the crew. We had, on the next cruise, I think we set a record. It was the next cruise was the cruise some of you will remember we made for Detroit, crumped out once again, and we got shoved up forward into their cruise. We went with Saratoga again, and on one of the days, well, at some point in the cruise, one of the rigs on the starboard side, the fueling rigs, had gone out. And if you remember those rigs, they had big, about 12 inches, 14 inches in diameter, big hydraulic pistons in them. And the seals had gone out. And we CASREP'd the thing, and we're waiting for help and waiting for help. And finally, one of the senior chiefs said, "Hey, screw this. I can fix this myself. Just get me a calm day at sea where we're not rolling around too much." And he and, I forget the senior chief's name, but he and Petty Officer Sagalski, who I still remember because he won a weightlifting contest, went up on that rig at sea and hoisted that cylinder about halfway out of there, fixed all the bearings of the thing, and back home at Cerveron 4, they couldn't believe we had fixed this thing at sea. It was just an amazing demonstration of the ship's cruise capability. Wonderful. I remember so many of the great guys. Charlie, I hear you're there. I can't see you. There you are. We had a good wardroom. We had a great crew, chiefs, and I got nothing but great memories of this. I've got a couple more stories, which you may not be interested in. Charlie, tell me one while we're at it.
Well, I remember I talked about the fact that we did almost 3 unreps in 24 hours. The Saratoga that didn't want us to unrep them coming out of Mallorca when they did the line of death, and then Detroit melted the boiler and we had to steam down and catch the Indy battle group, and then we were screaming the Coral Sea, and it was like we threw a Mercedes off the back of the ship, you said. So with the amount of fuel we burned. I remember we were in Sigonella, one of our favorite ports, and we were coming out of there and the weather was bad. And we went through that breakwater sideways. I don't know how we did it, but you were up there and we got through. It was amazing.
Oh, I remember that. I do remember that one.
Yeah, the other one that was interesting, we went to Haifa, and I remember Haifa because the Israelis wanted us to come into port. And the Navy said, you guys are a floating bomb. There's no way you're going to tie up next to the pier, because if, you know, the Hezbollah or somebody does something, you're going to explode and wipe out just like the Beirut thing that went up. So we had to anchor out, and the Israelis said, keep your flag flying 24 hours and shine a light on it. So we had battle lanterns on the flags at night. And one night I remember I was in a Liberty boat, and out of the darkness came this black raft with about 8 guys on it with automatic weapons, and it just sort of came out, looked at us, and went back in the dark. It was like, okay, these guys aren't playing around. Another one I remember is we were up in Trieste, and they had those willoways up there, and the anchor chain was like stretched straight out. We had to stop Liberty. I remember jumping from the Liberty boat to get on the ladder and coming back from Liberty. I never went off.
Was that Trieste or Taranto?
Pardon?
Was that Trieste or Taranto?
It was Trieste. It was Trieste, because we had the Saratoga, and the guy wanted his eggs, and we told him, no, we don't think it's a good idea, but the CL wanted his eggs. We busted a whole bunch of eggs when the 46 took them over because the winds were so bad. So,
yeah, I remember that time along well, first of all, here's the story from Wazak. Maybe we'll be the only guy who appreciates this, but I had when I was a Top Gun, I had gone up to the Air Force Fighter Weapons School and flown against those guys. And one of the guys I flew against up there was a guy named, an Israeli named Eitan Ben Aliyahu. And Eitan went on to
I remember that.
Yeah, he went on to be Chief of Staff of the Israeli Air Force. But at the time we were in Haifa, he was commander of an Israeli base air base called Ramat David, not too far away. So I got the special services, you know, those people that came aboard and had all the tours and so forth. The woman who organized all that, I said, was Israeli, of course, and I said, you need to get me in touch with Eitan Ben Aliyahu. And she said, she came back a day later and said, it's harder than you think, but I did make it. And so finally I got him on the phone, and he said, hey, you got to. So I went the next day. I went up to Ramat David, brought my flight suit, and he put me in the back seat of one of his armed F-16s on a combat op over the Golan Heights. That was one that didn't go in my logbook.
I remember asking Phil Rule, the XO, I said, what are we going to do if he gets shot down or he shoots somebody down?
Yeah.
And I remember Phil Rule saying this, the captain's in there doing all this, and if he gets shot down, it's all going to come down on my head.
Then we had a tour up there, if you guys remember this. We were the station ship that was supporting the Beirut, the American embassy in Beirut. We were there for about 3 weeks, and we were the sort of the at-sea logistics platform. Remember, Beirut was in a civil war at the time, and and the embassy was kind of under siege. We would fly in their supplies. They really couldn't even go out in town. And early one morning before Reveille, I got a radioman came down and had a message, which was a warning from the intelligence people saying that a light plane was going to come out and try to attack us. So I called General Quarters and made sure that the Sea Whiz was all manned up correctly and everything. Fortunately, the light plane never came, but the crew I had a little excitement trying to get ready for an attack right off the coast of Lebanon by the Cruise Druze or whatever faction was going to come out there.
Yeah, no, I remember that because we used to have to run to Akrotiri in Cyprus.
Right.
And we'd fly the helos in, pick up whatever was there, or we'd go to the embassy first, pick them up, go to Akrotiri, drop the people off, pick up new people and new supplies.
Yes, by the way, out of my own pocket, I bought a case of champagne. We were going to be there for New Year's Eve, and I sent it in to the embassy, compliments to the ambassador, compliments of the Navy, and he sent me a real nice letter back thanking the ship for all the support and for the champagne.
Was that right before the attack on the Marine Corps in Beirut, or was that after?
That was after.
That was after the attack on the embassy in Beirut was A3.
Yeah, well, we were supporting the embassy, and you remember Gunnar Sigalski? I mean, not Gunnar Ski.
Yeah, I remember.
Well, Gunnar Ski was one of those guys that should have been a SEAL. I think he was always kind of looking for a gunfight. And I had to get Gunnar aside and said, look, you can take weapons in there. Certainly we're going to protect ourselves if we need to, but your first job is to get out of there if possible. And fortunately, again, we had no incident. Here's another one you might remember. We were off in the mid-Mediterranean somewhere. I forget. And I get a message from Surf Force 6th Fleet saying, are you H-53, is your flight deck H-53 qualified? And I sent him back a note. It was not certified for 53 ops. Remember that 53 is that big, huge helicopter.
Yeah, I think it was a 53 Echo they were looking for, and we couldn't take that.
Well, we did take it eventually, though. Remember, we
a Super Stallion landed on the flight deck.
Yep.
Yeah.
But what happened was the FBI or the CIA or somebody, some of the spooks had captured one of the terrorists that was involved in the Beirut bombing, and they lured him to sea. They were going to. The helicopter was the special ops helicopter that was going to go pick him up after they captured the guy and take him out of the country. And they needed a place to refuel. And so I said, well, we're not certified, but I think we can do this safely. So we did a super FOD walk down up by that helicopter's downwash out of the way. We figured out where it should land if we had been certified for it. The thing comes in, Special Forces helicopter, these armed guys get out, and the guy, the guy that's in charge of the refueling gets out, looks at our excellent gas we had to give him, aviation gas, takes on a load, and then they take off again without shutting down. And the Sixth Fleet satellite radio comes up again and said, "Did our package make it, and has it been delivered?" And they're being very cryptic about this Special Forces op. But yes, we came back and said, "Yep, package just took off." And so Seattle had at least one H-53 landing on the flight deck. Anybody remember that? Charlie, were you there then?
Yeah, I think I remember that one. We also had a time where we had two special guys on board that I had to tell people they were TACAN techs.
Yeah, that's right.
And they stayed in the mast area where the TACAN stuff was, and they were doing spook stuff. And
I remember that. So here's another one, Maz. You might remember this. We had for you non-engineers, I hate to get the details, but we had each boiler has a thing called a bottom blow valve. And you guys do remember the OPI inspections we'd have before we'd get underway, and you had to pass the OPI or you couldn't go on cruise. It was a big nail-biting, tough exercise, and they just checked all your valves and everything. So I had known from previous things that luckily I had known from the pass down from the engineers that our bottom blow valves always leaked, and that was a fail item for this OPI inspection. So while we were in the States, I'd gotten the shipyard over and got their engineers to look at it, and they said, your design is all wrong. They were at right angles when the tubes going into them were at right angles, and they should have been curved so they could take the pressure as the valves heated up. And I said, "Okay, you gonna fix it?" And they said, "No, we can't fix it now." And I said, "I can't pass an OPI." And they said, "Well, we'll give you a waiver." So 3 months later, we're having the OPI, and sure enough, the bottom blow valves are leaking, and the inspectors are getting all ready to fire us. And I whip out this Surfland waiver for leaking bottom blow valves. And Moz, I think I turned that letter over to you when I gave you the ship.
You did.
I don't know if they ever got fixed.
When I took over the boilers division in '88, we took care of that for you, Captain. Chief Leroy Lewis and I took care of everything. I don't know.
So I don't. There's more stories, I guess, but in fact, there's a lot more stories. But I'm going to shut up here and just say what an honor and a privilege it was to be part of that crew and part of that ship. I had a lot of jobs in the Navy that I look back on with funness, but that one's right near the top of my list.
Well, I'm sure we could actually pull stories out of you for another 3 or 4 hours if we had the time. The East Coast sailors are probably getting later in the night. Craig, what's up next on this?
Well, it depends on when we're going to do the next one. I think we're about ready to wind this one up. And we were talking about doing the next one from the follow-on years for about the next 5-7 years. And then one more until the ship decommissions. And we'll work on that when we get a date from Rich. You thinking about when you're going to do a date, Rich?
I think I sent out to the board members anyway, a list of dates for our board meetings and Zoom meetings. And I believe I don't have that handy, but we were doing the first Thursday of the month, which would be the 3rd for a Zoom meeting, and then the following Thursday for a board meeting.
3rd of which month?
September.
September, okay.
That's correct, Rich.
And for you, Dan, I noticed you did a pretty swift jump there on the meeting ID numbers. And we had a wonderful meeting going on a different ID number before we shifted over. So that information is lost. We talked about you a lot. And most of it was positive, but
As long as the fit reps only show the positive things, it's all good.
always.
What's interesting is we have Captain Tolbert was, you know, on the Black Shoe CO side of things, was my first commanding officer as I came on board, and Commander Lear was the chief engineer, and as new to the Navy and getting on board as an ensign, having a Cheng that could bench lift a house was a pretty big thing for Commander Lear, big guy. And he is now still part of the group, and he's connected on Facebook. So if we can try and get Tolbert and Lear and some of the 88, 89 crew, we got our ass kicked in Gitmo. We got through that, went to the Indian Ocean, you know, did this, you know, got our shellback done. And then almost the whole crew was on there for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So a lot of stuff happened right before, Craig, you got on board, but we that group of the wardroom and the ship's crew will have some good stories. So
Okay, so we'll try and round up some more people. I want to extend my sincere appreciation to Captain Pete Fitzwilliam, Vice Admiral Machek, and Vice Admiral Frost for joining us tonight. Your stories were wonderful, and
Tell Sherry.
crew here loves it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
well, this is a great night. I thank everybody for being part of it, and I appreciate all the stories. We'll post the recording for those that want to take better notes. I'm sorry that it was recorded about the flight over enemy territory with the Israeli Air Force officer Eaton, Admiral. Hopefully that's been declassified already.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thanks, Admiral Frost. Everybody have a safe night, and everybody stay safe with this COVID virus.
Frosty, be well and say Margie hi.
Good luck, David Frost.
Okay, say hello to Margie
Good
there,
luck.
and your bride. Next time you're down, we still got to
Good
do
luck.
some call.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Thanks, Greg.
Charlie Tuma.
Good night,
Thank you,
all.
man.
Charlie Tuma, please.
Hey, Mike, good to meet you.
Yes, who yelled Charlie Tuma?
I did, Rich.
I was looking for,
Can you get me your email address, please?
Sure.
I would appreciate it.
I'll cut and paste from the
on,
chat stream for you, Rich.
Okay.
Mark, I was looking for you on Facebook. I was going to send you a picture of the entrance to the VLF site. Can't hear me?
I'm not on Facebook, though.
Oh, okay. All right. Email?
Man,
Yeah, email. I'm on the website. I'm the secretary for the association, so my email's on the website.
Those pictures. You'll like them.
All right.
Mike, Steve, I know, are you a member of our association?
On your mailing list, but I regret to say I've never paid my dues.
Okay.
But I am on your mail. I get your emails all the time.
Okay, great.
But
And
now,
Mike,
I
we
guess
can-
I'll pay my dues now that I've done this, because this
Come on,
was really nice.
Suppo.
I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, that's what we're doing this for. Yeah, Mike, I'm gonna put your name on our list, and I'm gonna send you an email probably tomorrow about when you could, how you could jump in, set up a password and some contact information. And I want to do the same with Charlie. And David, Mr. Frost there, Admiral, do we have a current address for you?
Yep, I'm still here.
Do we have a current address on our website for you? Do you know?
I'm sorry, what?
Does our
mailing
website
address.
have a current address for you, mailing address?
I think so, but it's dfrost, DFROST 1310 at AOL.com.
We'll email you to get and to make sure we have a proper mailing address. Thank
Right.
you, Admiral Frost.
hopefully in the very near future, we're going to be doing a newsletter, and we're going to try to mail these out. That's why we need current addresses for everybody.
Okay.
Well, it was a wonderful evening. I know it's getting late on the East Coast. It's still early on the West Coast, but I still have one more day of work this week. I haven't retired yet.
Come on.
Well, thank you, Dan, for running this thing. Appreciate it.
Once I save this recording, I will ship it to you, Rich, the same way I did the last one.
Ship it to Ray also. He's the one
Oh.
that put it on the
Ship
website.
it to Ray. Ray's the important one. I get it. All
Yeah.
right. Good
Hey,
night,
Steve.
everybody.
Gentlemen,
night.
thank you again.
Good night. See you next time.